Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I really want you to consider the fact that there is a green building wave happening in the world. Everybody is talking about greening this and greening that. And I've always wondered, what about paint? What's on the shelves? Is there healthy paint? And then I found Bioshield, healthy living paint out of New Mexico, and decided to invite Amrita and Rudolf Reitz to It's Rainmaking Time. They're a couple who've been doing business together for 7 years and together for 7 years. They're kind of an anomaly because a lot of people don't know necessarily how to be together in love and be together in work and figure out that balance. And we are also going to talk to them about that as well. But let's find out about healthy living paint. Welcome Amrita and Rudolf Reitz to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. I know that this company started in 1982. You've had a 20-year track record. There's something happening with the green industry and the green building wave. And when we first spoke, Amrita, you started to share about that. And I thought the public should understand the context of what's happening on the shelves, what's happening with paint, what's happening with the packaging. Very much like food labels, we have to pay attention to paint labels.
Correct.
Talk to us.
Okay. Just like food, just like clothing, just like body care products, labels need to be read, and you need to understand what you're getting into. In the paint world, which is where we live and dwell and create, Rudolf created a paint that contained no acrylic copolymer base, which is what all paint manufacturers make in the United States. It's a paint which is called latex paint or water-based latex paint. The new hit word low VOC or zero VOC is what everyone's looking for. And the mass of people who go to buy paint trust and believe that if they go to a store and buy a low VOC or zero VOC paint, it's healthy and better for the environment. And that is not necessarily true.
Why?
Acrylic is a brittle product, like a plasticky kind of product. A copolymer is added and mixed with the acrylic to give it a latex-like product. There is no latex in latex paint. The copolymer has been proven to cause cancer in animals and to be unhealthy for humans. It is probable carcinogen for humans, but it is not shown. You know, they will not say, yes, it causes cancer. Yes.
Very much like cell phones.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So the low VOC packaging and the zero VOC paint packaging is very much like the packaging of food when it says natural.
Correct. It's such a broad spectrum. Also, in the United States, there are VOC regulations and there are solvent regulations.
Talk about that.
Two separate regulations. So, if you reconfigure your ingredients slightly, you can say your product is zero VOC, and if your solvent is, say, acetone, nail polish remover, you don't have to disclose the VOCs in the solvent because it's a separate regulation. So you're not buying a zero VOC product. You're not buying a low VOC product. You're buying a scam. You're buying a lie, and it's very disturbing.
Well, the way you have to see it, let me interrupt you there.
Go ahead, Rudolf. Go ahead.
There are solvents which are exempt from VOC regulations, and those can still be in certain paints. They can be harmful to your health, and you can still declare a paint as low or no VOC.
Correct.
That's amazing.
Correct.
How is that possible? And why is that regulation allowing that to happen?
That's our lovely government.
Is it an international phenomenon? For example, I know that you're from Germany, Rudolf. Is that regulation also in Germany, either when you began this company or today?
Well, we have VOC regulations since a few years in Germany. VOC is not the only issue. VOC is one issue in the complex chemical choices for making paints. VOC regulations came about or were thought about already in the 80s and then 90s in order to control photosynthetic smog in cities. So certain solvents will cause photosynthetic smog, which will give you the gray haze like you see at the horizon, for instance, if you drive in LA or in other larger cities.
What is photosynthetic smog? Are you just talking about the color of what the smog looks like? What is it? Isn't smog smog?
Yaks. I'm sorry.
It's a reaction.
Correct.
With solvents.
Correct.
Yeah, and those solvents cause the photosynthetic smog.
And that affects the ozone.
No, that affects the more immediate breathing environment where we live. Yeah. If there's a high level of ozone in cities, like in Germany, they shut down traffic.
Wow.
Cars cause photosynthetic smog. Well, anyway, in the 90s, there was a lot of thinking, how can we reduce this photosynthetic smog? And since people do not want to go without their cars, they were looking for other ways to reduce it. And one of these ways was areas where there were high amounts of solvents being used. For instance, computer industry uses high amounts of solvents. Furniture industries use high amounts of solvents. Paint industry, paint itself uses or used to use and still uses high amounts of solvents. So wherever this solvent use could be reduced, they were kind of knitting the laws around that. Now, as everything else in this country and in other countries as well goes through lobbying, the paint manufacturers say, well, yeah, we can do this, but certain things we cannot do. So we need to have a loophole. We need to have a few solvents that you do not
regulate.
That you do not regulate, so we can keep making certain products.
So it's very much like the pharmaceutical industry and that lobby and the FDA.
And that way, for instance, they said, well, let's acetone is a usable solvent for all kinds of applications. Let's exempt that. So I have been on a green building show where somebody said, oh, my stain is no VOC. I put acetone in it. He said that. Yeah. Well, I said, that doesn't mean that it's a green product. Yeah. Acetone has a certain toxicity, and if you put that in your stain in exchange for a solvent that underlies VOC regulation, that doesn't mean that you have a green product. But people insist, well, we have a green product. Let's go and look at the overall industry and the chemicals. The paint industry has the choice of over 10,000 mostly unregulated chemicals to make their products. In our small kind of, green grassroots movement of making paints, we have maybe 200 different ingredients that either have been proven non-toxic or have been tested as being non-toxic. Yeah, and so we're working with 200 chemicals, and the industry works with 10,000 chemicals. Now, you can count it on your 10 fingers that not all of those 10,000 chemicals are non-toxic. As a matter of fact, the majority of those chemicals is toxic. So a green product is not determined as to how much VOC it has, but rather than how many toxins are in there. Yeah. So if we really want to look at it with a magnifying glass, we have to look at each and every ingredient that is in a product and say, will this be beneficial to your indoor air, or will this be bad for your indoor air? And if it's bad for your indoor air, it will be bad for your health.
In our previous discussions, you were both talking about the distinction between indoor air quality and off-gassing, or indoor air quality versus paint, but they're connected, even though they're different. And I was wondering if you can explain the context of off-gassing from paint, and also when you first walk into a building that's been freshly painted versus walking in 5 or 10 years from that point, does it really matter?
Well, VOC means volatile organic compounds. They are evaporative, and a lot of solvents will evaporate within a relatively short time period, let's say 2 to 8 weeks or 2 to 10 weeks. Those are the fast evaporating solvents, but during that time you have those solvents in your indoor air, and you breathe them, and this can be enough to make you sick, possibly for the rest of your life. There are other building materials like composite woods and plywoods, which contain synthetic resins, and attached to those resins can be formaldehyde and other chemical substances that are toxic, that can evaporate over a time of 10 to 15 years. So you have the quick-releasing solvents, and you have the slow-releasing resins and solvents that will really last a long time.
When you started the business, you started not by a fluke, but kind of by serendipitous event. You talked about how your mom was really advanced in health and in food. Talk a little bit about the inspiration for the business.
Well, the inspiration came really from my parents. My mother was into organic gardening already in the 50s, and she raised me vegetarian, healthy, and so on.
And healed your father from tuberculosis with diet.
Wow.
After the war, he had tuberculosis, and they completely changed their diet, and she pulled him out of it without medication.
That's amazing.
No, she was amazing.
Anyway, so in the 80s, when my parents retired, they decided to move away. They had a factory, and they were living right next to the factory. It was very noisy. They decided to move away from there and build their own house. So that was probably in 1980, 81. And my mother did some research as to what she wanted her house to be, and she really made some good choices as to what building materials to use. And also in the early 80s, there were some paint or natural paint pioneers coming out with some oils and things like that. So built on that idea, I came to America also in the early 80s. I said, well, I think this is an idea that we do not have in America yet. This is something I want to pursue. I want to offer this. There was no market for this, and when people say, well, a natural wood finish, what is that? They were laughing at me.
That's what happens when you're ahead of your time.
I had people laughing at me for 15 or 20 years.
I understand.
And I stubbornly...
Oh, they still are.
I stubbornly, but you might. They stubbornly stuck to their ideas and said, oh, that's never going to happen. That's something, it's ridiculous, and so on and so on. And I bet you once it came into the big boardrooms of the paint manufacturers in the 90s that there are developments of healthier paints and so on, they said, oh, we don't need to deal with that. And they're still probably on the same level when it comes to offering a health product.
Absolutely. I was going to say even the health food stores, there's a lot of packaging that says natural, healthy, this, and there's stuff in there that shouldn't be in there, and you really still have to read the ingredients.
the health food industry is a very good
example,
and there's a lot of parallels there that are very interesting. Like we have now a health label that says USDA approved. It's not a very high organic level anymore. Even companies like Whole Foods, they buy vegetables from China. Now, I wonder what is healthy about buying vegetables from China, where you can't even control whether it's organically grown or not.
Or what kind of water is being used on it.
The USDA approved label, but the product itself is not a high level. The same thing happens in the paint industry and the housing industry. Companies import not only paint and paint ingredients, they import drywall from China. There recently has been a big stink about this drywall in New Orleans, where they were trying to rebuild New Orleans and had to tear down the drywall again because it was full of formaldehyde and toxins, because they were using fly ash from the coal power plants, which was full of sulfur and other toxins. So they had to take it out again because people were getting sick just from the drywall alone.
I totally believe it.
Coming back to
paint,
our paint compares to
no one's paint
to mainstream green paint, like USDA approved produce from China compares to organic produce that you buy on the farmer's market.
Wasn't it a challenge, and is still a challenge, doing what you're doing at the level you're doing it with paint? Because the public's not fully aware yet.
Not at all. Not even close. They're not educated yet.
It is still a challenge. We have several challenges. We're chronically underfinanced. We don't have enough volume to justify manufacturing right here on the premises yet, I say.
Yes.
And we are buying raw materials that are higher priced than the paint industry uses and buys. So we're running against windmills like Don Quixote, because we're trying to sell something for a higher price where the industry says, oh, buy our stuff. It's the same. It's just as good. It's no VOC, and it's like 30% less.
Yeah, but your time has come. Your time is now. All the work that you did is going to be well worth it, because there are people who are waking up and have awakened and are ready for you. There are builders that are ready for you. There are designers that are ready for you. There are architects ready for you. There's all kinds of contractors that are ready for you now in all parts of the world, all parts of the United States. And I'm absolutely delighted that you're doing what you're doing. I'm fascinated that you have a clay paint. Can you talk a little bit about it, Amrita, and then we'll go back to you, Rudolf?
It is a product that no one else makes. It is a clay-based paint, and clay has been used in buildings and building material for thousands and thousands of years. Clay has properties that no other types of paint has. Clay absorbs odor. It regulates moisture. It absorbs moisture and releases moisture, so it keeps a constant in the room, a very comfortable constant. And it gives you an ambiance, a nuance in your space like no other paint. It gives you an earthy feeling. Even though we can get vibrant, beautiful colors from our clay paint, you still get that clay feel.
Is all your paint clay, or you have a line that's
We
clay?
have other lines of paint that we manufacture. Clay paint is one of them. It is our most popular. I am sold out of it completely right now. In 3 weeks, I sold out almost a whole container of paint.
Wow.
We also make what we call a solvent-free paint. And the reason why we call it that is because we want people to understand, and it's not quite hitting yet, that our paints are not only zero VOC, but they are also solvent-free. So they're clean. So the solvent-free line is what I call my healthy version of regular paint.
Wow. And that's for regular walls, that's for indoors.
For someone who just wants to paint matte finish paint or a satin-based paint for a kitchen or bathroom, they can look at that line of paint. It's called solvent-free.
Wonderful. You also have finishes, too, don't you?
Correct. We have stains for doors and wood. We have floor finishes, oil-based or water-based. Our products, we have an enamel for an interior-exterior use for doors and trim woodwork that is phenomenal. It dries within an hour and 2 coats, and it's a beautiful satin sheen, and it's gorgeous. Beautiful product, 0 VOC and solvent-free. Our stain dries in a half an hour.
Rudolf, when you were bringing all these products into being, you must have worked with an incredible team to do this. How did you know what to do? Did you have a mentor? Did anybody teach you? Did you have to go to a scientist to help you make sure that these were done properly?
We had a good for the latest development. Let's say what we did in the last 10 years. We had a chemist on board who used to be a chemist with a German company called Penaten, which produces like baby shampoos and baby creams and stuff like that. They were later taken over by Johnson & Johnson.
No doubt.
This guy was a retired chemist, and he really knows his stuff, as they say. And we said, well, we want to do this and this and this, which will not have this and this effect. So he got himself into researching different binders and things like that, and that's how we developed those products. Relatively on a shoestring, I would say.
Many great things are. Many great organizations and causes and many great efforts have been started on nothing, really.
Yeah, we had him on retainer for a few years, and we still can get his expertise if ever we need it. But at the moment, we're focusing more on really marketing our potential and trying to get the product out.
You were influenced by Rudolf Steiner, is that correct?
To some degree, I still am.
All day long.
He's awesome. We're doing a piece on Rudolf Steiner in a few weeks.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I'd love for you to talk about how the work of Rudolf Steiner inspired you with regard to creating the paint.
Well, the cradle of the natural paint industry goes back to Rudolf Steiner, and it was a group of Waldorfians or Steinerians, however you want to call them, in Dornach, near Basel, where is the center of the anthroposophists. They call them anthroposophists in Germany.
Yes.
So, and there was a group of people that said, well, we want to make watercolors from plant materials. And they moved to some part in northern Germany. They bought a farmhouse and did biodynamic farming, and then they also developed these watercolors. And with the watercolors, then there came the need for furniture finishes and waxes, and that developed then into paints and other finishes. And that was a movement that started in the early 80s in Germany. So very quickly, there were probably a couple dozen small paint companies in Germany, and now it's natural paint companies, which over the last 25 to 30 years reduced itself down to maybe 5 or 6 major ones.
So the Steiner Group was in Basel, Switzerland?
They were in near Basel,
Yeah.
A place called Dornach.
Okay.
But then they moved to Germany. They were Germans, but I don't know all the details, but they were in Dornach to train probably for teachers and all the different aspects of the Rudolf Steiner way. And they wanted to direct their research initially to making plant-based watercolors. They also made dyes for dyeing wool and silk and other protein-based fabrics, not so much cotton, which is a wood fiber.
I wish they had an influence on the International Bank of Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. That would be great. We wouldn't be in so much trouble all over the world had Rudolf Steiner's group been able to influence the International Bank of Settlements, you know? But it is what it is. You know about the International Bank of Settlements?
Not too much.
It's the central clearinghouse of the planet Earth for anything money.
Really?
Yeah.
That's in Basel.
Basel, Switzerland.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Answerable to nobody.
Everything clears except for a little bit that gets stuck on.
Well, yeah. Well, that you mean in the Federal Reserve System? That's a whole other thing. What is the challenge now getting the message to the industries, not only the consumers as they wake up one by one, but the contractors?
I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, please. Please do.
Because I deal with all of those people. I feel that architects, as far as I can tell from training them and talking with them daily, and I am starting a training program, which I talked about last night with one of the architects I met with, actually training sectors of accredited architects, 20 to 30 at a time, on our product line, so they get an understanding. Architects are far more open than contractors, I find. They want to understand, and they want to know. Builders and contractors, I find, are a little tougher to teach. I think they want to do it faster, cheaper, and get on to the next project. I think they feel the pressure of having to finish a project quickly and doing it for the least amount of money so their profit is higher. So that's what I find. But there are some builders who are sincerely interested in green, but it is a difficult road to train them to understand.
Once there's an economy of scale with your line of products, I really think that there will be cost effectiveness once it gets to a certain point, but that the public really needs to get on board and to share in this if they're serious about, quote, greening their homes and their apartments and their buildings. Have you ever been approached to do a line of outside paint for houses and buildings?
Yes, we've been asked. We do have some exterior paint in Germany, but not here.
Do you think that you will do it,
Rudolf?
Well, it's a complicated
It's
issue.
a finance thing, isn't it? There's going to be a R&D for this, correct?
Well, you can't use every one product for every outside application. Like they supposedly use latex paint on outside and it doesn't hold. You have, for instance, you have masonry surfaces where a silicate paint is probably the best to use. But if a latex paint has been applied to that surface, it needs to be taken off, and you need to go back down to the masonry structure. Then there's wood surfaces. You need a completely different product for wood surfaces. And then there's specialty surfaces, and for every specialty surfaces, you might have to make a specialty product. Like there are doors which are made from exterior doors, which are made from like some kind of composite plastic material. Neither a paint that will work on wood nor a paint that will work on a masonry surface will work on that. So there's a lot of different choices to make, and that's a little bit out of our league.
At the time.
Tackle something.
At the moment.
At this moment.
Gotcha. I think you're going to tackle it, though. I have a feeling you're going to get there.
But I was going to say something for your previous question, what Amrita was trying to talk about. Now, if we got to look at a third group also, which is the manufacturing side of products here in this company, the industry. Yeah, the industry is an obstacle for us because they are trying to offer a cheaper product but try to praise it, or with praising it more than we can praise our product because they have a much bigger, much louder speech. They have a lot more money to put into advertising and public relations. Yeah, so that's one obstacle. The other obstacle is the contractor who is usually not the same level of education as an architect.
Right.
Architect will intellectually kind of look at the product and try to understand what's going on. The contractor, like Amrita said, wants to get the job done and get out. He doesn't necessarily want to read the instructions. So there's a certain degree of failure because he didn't read the instructions, and he doesn't want to. And why does he not want to read the instructions? Because he kind of has a natural aversion to learning, because that's not what's bringing him the money. What's bringing him the money is the time that he spends on the product and the price that he pays for the material.
And getting it done. Correct. Yeah? Correct. Absolutely, Rudolf.
He wants to have a bigger bang for the buck that he gets with lower materials that perform a little bit different, a little bit faster, a little bit easier than ours.
And it even goes further than that, I believe. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But a person who's building a house or redoing a house, remodeling, trusts their contractor. Implicitly, they have to.
Would you think today that they do? Because how many contractors take money and start jobs and then they're always in court? I mean, contractors are notorious for not finishing their jobs, though.
They trust the choice that the contractor makes. I get the call every day of, well, my contractor has already painted the walls with a low VOC paint and we're fine. No question. And at some point I let go and say, should I educate them? The paint's already on the wall.
You know, I did an interview with Dan Winter the other day. He talks about fractals and what is it in physics that creates a living charge in environments. And I think that when you talk about sustainable environments, when you talk about matter being animate and that the materials you use are dead or alive, everything has a charge. And so if everything has a charge, your paint has a charge. All materials have a charge, positive or negative, life-giving or life-taking.
I believe it.
And so using that paradigm, what you're doing truly is providing paint that has a living charge, a living energy in it. That is a whole different gestalt than simply saying it's non-toxic paint. So not only is it non-toxic paint and free of solvents, it is paint that has a living charge.
Correct.
Okay, and that's really different. And once you get into the whole concept of resonance, we are talking literally a quantum level difference in the charge of a place.
Correct. And I'd like to elaborate on that.
Please.
The integrity that Rudolf and I hold for this company. We owned a building we were in. We were right behind Home Depot. It generated a lot of store business for us here in Santa Fe. It was a beautiful location. We had beautiful offices, great warehousing. But right in front of our building, they put up these huge rusty poles, very, very tall. How tall would you say they are, Rudolf?
I don't know, 40 feet?
Yeah, huge electrical tower poles running down the street we were on. And we decided we needed to sell the building and move out of there because of the electricity and that would
electromagnetic field.
Right.
That would affect not only our beings but our product. And we really suffered from moving from there. I've had to reconfigure our client base because of where we had to move to. And that's the integrity we hold for this company, is we really, really care about people and the earth.
But the interesting thing to look at is also, I want to get back to the contractor again, and this is not every contractor. I'm sure there's health-conscious contractors, but if you give the contractor a choice, here's a hamburger and here's a carrot, what do you think he will eat?
The hamburger.
and that is dead matter. That is dead flesh. Yeah.
Yes.
A carrot has life in it. Meat, a hamburger is dead. Yeah. So what I'm trying to come to, I've had that many times, that a contractor is not only unwilling to use our paints, he's unwilling to look at the healthy aspects. He gets aggressive. He says, "No, this is terrible. This is terrible paint," because he has an aversion against even the word health, the health aspects. Yeah, and I used to make a joke. It said, the reason why these people don't want to use our paints is because they don't get the usual buzz, or the buzz that they're used to from the chemicals.
That's outrageous.
That's wild.
It's true.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's ever been any studies about what happens in the life of people who paint and use those toxic
of
chemicals.
Their liver.
Because it all goes to the liver, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And the lungs?
And the lungs, yeah.
In one of our conversations, in the context of the green building wave, you were talking about the organization LEED, who recognized the trend and developed this system of business credits so that buildings would be painted in a certain way or done in a certain way. Talk about that.
I can only talk badly about it, so maybe Amrita should.
No, really, I just want you to educate us. I took notes on it, but it's much more involved than the notes I took.
Okay, LEED is a small beginning, yeah, but there's a group of people. They really wanted to take over the lead. They want to dominate what goes into buildings and not and profit from that. It's not altogether a very pure concept what they offer, because VOC is one topic. Energy conservation is another. You get LEED credits for having a low energy consuming house. You get LEED credits for VOCs and so on. But do you really get LEED credits for indoor air pollution or not? It really does not. It does not really tackle this problem, and doesn't tackle the issue. If I see a building that's been LEED certified, it's for me the same old, same old. It is not much difference from what the ordinary builder does.
I would like to interject here.
Yeah.
The LEED was a beginning point, and they use a point system to try and accumulate a certain level of building points to give you a status, LEED status, platinum, gold, silver. But it is truly not enough, and it is becoming completely clear that it is not enough, a point system. And what is truly important are ingredients that are used in the building product itself. And what is coming about now is called transparency of a company. Not only showing an ingredient list, but also exactly where each ingredient is sourced from and how it is sourced. That is the responsible new wave that is coming into this green building world. There is a company called Pharos, which is very new, Pharos.
Okay.
Pharos. Please look them up. They are a much more reliable company for building companies and businesses that are building. Google Global, which is a huge company, Google, uses Pharos for all their buildings. If you want to be a product used by Google in their global buildings, you have to get through Pharos.
Is that a good thing?
It's difficult, and I'm doing it now because they contacted us, and I have not been able to get through their questionnaire quite yet, but I'm almost there. It is intense, but it is responsible, and I truly appreciate that company because they have taken the initiative, and they're forcing these quasi-green companies, these greenwash companies, thinking they can jump on board by relabeling their product and not doing anything to what is inside their can. It's really questioning that kind of industry and how they make their product.
Is Pharos kind of the clearinghouse for this whole new industry of paint?
I think Pharos is going to replace LEED, I believe. I'm sorry, lead, but...
I don't believe so.
Well, maybe they'll be arm in arm, because lead is very big, but it doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't.
I think what is more important than what you said there is really to develop more indoor air testing equipment and criteria. If you want to look at it from a healthy aspect, what do you put on your walls? How healthy is it? Yeah. Then there comes the issue of transportation, origin, and so on and so on. Yeah? But primarily, the first aspect should always be the human health. How healthy is the product that I'm going to, or how little health damaging is the product that I put on my walls? What toxins are emitted in the air? Then I think and nobody really addresses that as much as we do. We say the product needs to be should not have harmful emissions.
Many years ago, I used to think that regulatory agencies were good and were for the benefit of the many. I don't think that anymore. I don't see that anymore. I think the more regulated stuff becomes, the more tyranny is really involved in huge financing and global financing and ill will, really, to just make money, and greed is behind a lot of regulation. So I think that not everything that's regulated is for our betterment. Just like bailing out the banks for $700 billion is not necessarily for the best of the economy. It's just simply for the banks.
That is the situation. There was a lack of regulation.
Yeah, okay, in that situation, yes, that's correct. But I think that, for example, the EPA has said that carbon is toxic. Well, we're made of carbon.
Yeah.
We're made of carbon. Carbon dioxide is toxic. And the reality is that there's a whole attempt to take over life on Earth. When you have the head of J.P. Morgan Chase in the derivatives market, architect, who, by the way, was a woman, or is a woman, come together with some of the architects of Enron and Al Gore and create a carbon credit system on something that is non-toxic, that is now deemed toxic, and now they're going to regulate the inside of your dwellings, okay, and come into our personal lives. You have havoc in a system. So I'm an environmental advocate. I'm for exactly what you're talking about, but we have to be very mindful of details. The devil and the light are in the details. And the devil and the light are also in paint and in food and in drugs and in everything. And so it's really about separating the wheat from the chaff. What are we really doing? So I really want to thank you for being on the show, and I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you'd like to say.
Thank you for being there, Kim, and doing all this, for sure. Incredible work that you're doing.
Thank you. It's so good to know that you exist and that you're there. I'm so glad that people listening to It's Rainmaking Time can find out about you. If my company, the Rainmaking Company, can ever assist you, please let us know. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking to, listening to, and learning from Amrita and Rudolf Reitz, and they are the owners of Bioshield Paint. You can reach them at bioshieldpaint.com. They produce healthy living paint, and we should be part of this evolution and this transformation in the paint industry. Rudolf, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, I think that we need, in order to determine what to do and what not to do, we cannot go with the flow. We cannot learn from TV, or we cannot think in the direction that everybody else thinks. We need to get outside of the general thinking process and look at things with like a fresh eye, and that's how changes happen, not by following what everybody else does.
We really appreciate you being on. Thank you both for being here.
Thank
you very much. Have a nice day.
And let me know if you ever need a rainmaker.
Always.